Once upon a time, 1 out of every 2 phones in the world was this brand. Then the new CEO made a single decision. 3 years later, the 150-year-old company was sold. This is Nokia's story. February 11th, 2011. When Nokia employees opened their emails, they found a shocking letter waiting for them. CEO Stephen Elop said, "Our company is standing on a burning platform." The letter continued, "Nokia has lost its leadership position in the mainstream smartphone race. 4 years have passed since the first iPhone was released. We still haven't provided a leading alternative." This letter was the turning point in Nokia's history, because a year earlier, they still controlled 38% of the world phone market. In 2007, this rate exceeded 50%. 1 out of every 2 phones sold worldwide was Nokia. But Elop was right. The fire had already started. The company still hadn't noticed. Nokia's story began in 1865 with the paper factory Fredrik Idestam founded in Finland. For 100 years, it produced paper, rubber, electrical cables. In the 1960s, it moved to electronics. In the 1980s, it started developing mobile phones. In the 1990s, it created a complete revolution. In 1996, Nokia launched the 1011, the first real GSM phone. Then came the legendary Nokia 3310. It was famous for its durability. If you dropped it, the floor would break, not the phone. The Nokia Snake game would be played for generations. The company wasn't just producing phones, it was creating culture. In the early 2000s, Nokia was the world's undisputed phone king. People on every continent, at every income level, used Nokia. Brand assurance was absolute. There was a saying, "Nokia works, period." The company's market value exceeded $250 billion. It alone constituted 4% of Finland's GDP. When Nokia released the N95 in 2005, the world was amazed. GPS, Wi-Fi, 5-megapixel camera, video recording. By the standards of the time, it was like a pocket computer. Competitors tried for years to catch up with these features. Nokia was far ahead in technology, design, and production. Symbian operating systems controlled more than 60% of the global smartphone market. Samsung, Sony Ericsson, Motorola lagged behind Nokia. Palm, BlackBerry could only hold on in niche markets. Nokia's hegemony seemed unquestionable, but the real breaking point hadn't come yet. January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone on stage. "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone," he said. The audience was fascinated. The tech media went crazy. But nobody at Nokia headquarters was worried. CEO Olli-Pekka Kalasvuo calmly said, "How can a music company make phones?" When Nokia engineers examined the iPhone, they were shocked by what they found. The touchscreen technology was 2 years ahead of theirs. The operating system was designed with a completely different understanding. The user interface made Nokia's years of development look old overnight. When the first iPhone sales figures came in, Nokia management became uncomfortable. It sold 1 million units in 6 months. It had achieved half of BlackBerry's annual sales in 6 months. But the real shock came in the second year. With the iPhone 3G, sales soared to 11 million units. It had grown too big to ignore. The launch of Android in 2008 complicated things even more. Google was offering a free operating system. Samsung, HTC, LG immediately made deals with Google. Android phones started hitting the market. Nokia suddenly had to fight not only Apple, but also Google. This was exactly the point where return became impossible. What was Nokia's response? They continued to develop Symbian. In 2009, they released the N97. On paper, it was better than the iPhone. Bigger screen, physical keyboard, better camera. But the software was a disaster. Slow, buggy, not user-friendly. While reviewers expected an iPhone killer, they encountered an iPhone joke. Sales figures were alarming. Global market share, which was 49% in 2007, dropped to 36% in 2009. The situation was worse in the smartphone segment. While it was 51% in 2007, it fell to 39% in 2009. iPhone and Android phones were invading Nokia's backyard. In September 2010, Nokia's board made a radical decision. Kalasvuo would be removed, Stephen Elop from Microsoft would be brought in instead. For the first time, a non-Finnish person was taking charge of Nokia. Elop had worked for Microsoft for 2 years in the Windows division. He was seen as the man who would get Nokia back on its feet. When Elop started work, Nokia's situation was worse than it appeared from the outside. Market share was rapidly eroding. Symbian had reached a technological dead end. Competitors were releasing better products every quarter. Radical change was essential. On the morning of February 11, 2011, Nokia employees received that famous letter. The burning platform metaphor became headlines in the world press. Elop mercilessly described Nokia's situation. Android won the first ecosystem war. iOS is also winning the second war. Nokia hasn't even been able to join the battle yet. Employees were in shock. The CEO was publicly criticizing his own company. The next day brought an even bigger shock. Elop announced that Nokia would establish a strategic partnership with Microsoft. Symbian and MeeGo would be abandoned. Windows Phone would come in their place. Nokia would now become Microsoft's hardware partner. This detail didn't catch anyone's attention that day. Elop had only considered one alternative when announcing the partnership. Leaks about the decision-making process emerged years later. Nokia had 3 options: switch to Android, choose Windows Phone, or continue developing their own operating systems. According to Elop, Android was too competitive. Nokia would remain in Samsung's shadow there. Windows Phone offered Nokia a special position. There had been discussions between Google and Nokia. An Android partnership was on the table, but Elop thought this would make Nokia one of the Android manufacturers. Samsung was already getting stronger in that field. It would be difficult for Nokia to make a difference. In Windows Phone, they could stand out as the main partner. The decision made in February 2011 was the most controversial decision in Nokia's history. The transition from Symbian to Windows Phone would take 18 months. During this period, Nokia wouldn't be able to catch up with its competitors in either old or new technology. Further rapid erosion of market share was inevitable. The first Nokia with Windows Phone, the Lumia 800, was released in October 2011. The design was magnificent, the hardware was quality, but Windows Phone was completely unknown. While there were 500,000 apps in the App Store and 400,000 in Android market, there were only 40,000 in Windows Phone. Users were curious about Nokia's new phones, but hesitant about Windows Phone. It couldn't do everything Android and iOS could do. Popular apps like WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat either didn't exist or were very poor. Sales figures were disappointing. In the last quarter of 2011, Nokia's smartphone sales fell 51%. The Lumia series sold only 1 million units. In the same period, Samsung sold 22 million and Apple sold 37 million smartphones. 2012 was the year of great hope. Nokia would return with Windows Phone 8. The Lumia 920 would create a revolution. Wireless charging, optical image stabilization, 4.5-inch HD screen. Technologically, it was ahead of the iPhone 5, but it still didn't sell because the problem wasn't technology, it was the platform. And the cost of this decision emerged months later. In the second quarter of 2012, Nokia's global market share fell below 20% for the first time. It was 50% during the Symbian period. It had lost more than half of its market in 2 years. The situation was worse in the smartphone category. While it was 51% in 2007, it had dropped to 5% in 2012. Samsung took Nokia's old throne during this period. It became the leader of the Android market with the Galaxy series. Apple dominated the premium segment with the iPhone. Nokia was in third place in markets it used to control. The financial picture was much more ruthless. It had lost 1.1 billion euros in 2011. And announced a loss of 3.1 billion euros in 2012. Cash reserves were dwindling. Finland's pride was being mentioned with bankruptcy rumors. Nokia's stock also crashed. The stock that was 40 euros in 2007 fell to €2 levels in 2012. Investors had lost 130 billion euros. When market value fell to 10 billion euros, Nokia's cash reserves were worth more than the company itself. In September 2013, Nokia's sale became inevitable. Nokia announced that it would sell its mobile phone division to Microsoft. The sale price was 5.44 billion euros plus 1.65 billion euros in patent licenses, total 7.09 billion euros. Nokia's market value in 2007 was 130 billion euros. The 150-year-old company's phone journey had come to an end. 32,000 Nokia employees moved to Microsoft. Stephen Elop was among them. He would manage the Nokia division at Microsoft. Finland's technology giant had become history. Nokia made 3 critical mistakes. First mistake, they were late in platform selection and made the wrong choice. When the iPhone came out, Nokia waited for 4 years and stuck to old technology. Even when they saw Android's rise, they chose Windows Phone. While Android and iOS shared 75% of the market, they invested in Windows Phone with 3%. Second mistake, they planned the transition period wrong. For 18 months, they couldn't be competitive in either old or new technology. They ended Symbian, but Windows Phone wasn't ready. Competitors took advantage of this 18-month gap and captured Nokia customers. Third mistake, they underestimated customer loyalty. Nokia users were loyal to Nokia, not to Windows Phone. When they couldn't find the Nokia experience they expected, they fled to Android and iOS. Samsung and Apple inherited Nokia's 20-year customer base. Stephen Elop came to save Nokia but brought the end of the 150-year-old company. Perhaps this is the difference between courage and irreversible risk. Courage takes customers with you. Irreversible risk delivers them to competitors. Nokia was late, made the wrong choice, and the cost was 130 billion euros.